it's Brock Meyer here again. Just want to come with a word of encouragement for you and how we can live free, full, and unoffendable. We want to be those that we have the emotional stamina and we have a mindset that just doesn't get so easily offended. Instead, we just live full of grace, full of understanding, full of courage, full of the ability to override any offense that might come to us. We don't have the luxury, we can't afford the time to get locked up and jammed in offense. We've got to move forward. I don't necessarily like the way that somebody said that. I had an expectation. They didn't meet my expectations. I was really hoping it would be this. And it just doesn't work out that way. And so how can I rise above and live at a higher altitude than in this lower landscape where everybody else has way too much power and control to move and rattle my inner man? I don't want that. I want to live at the throne of Jesus to where I've just got a different perspective. I'm confident. Somebody's words or actions just can't move me as quickly. In Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 1, it says that we want to be this living sacrifice, pleasing and acceptable to God, that we would lay our lives down and that we'd have a different perspective, that we'd be conformed by the renewing of our mind, that we'd be transformed to having the mind of Christ. And it says that we shouldn't think of ourselves more highly than what we ought to, but we ought to think of ourselves in the way that God would see us. And so it really comes into this mindset. We're talking some crazy meta stuff going on to live in this American world and not live offended. I feel like we just live in this heightened state of offense all the time, especially if you're on social media. Somebody makes a comment, you don't like this, you don't like that, and all of a sudden, we just want to take offense. I want to encourage us, let's live in the throne room, not in the courtroom. Let's live full of grace and mercy, not full of justice toward each other. There's just a higher way to live. My son Judah, he is ambidextrous, means that he can use both hands. He will shoot a basketball with his right hand. He'll throw a baseball with his right hand, and then he'll shoot a basketball with his left. He'll swing a baseball bat right, and then he'll golf left. He'll kick left, but he writes right, and he'll eat right. And then he does other things where he grabs left. It's unbelievable to watch him do both. And I just wonder how much we see Jesus, that he was emotionally ambidextrous. He was able to kind of be in multiple venues. He had the EQ of understanding who people are without being offended by them. Yeah, he's called us to a righteous living, but it's okay for him to hang out with people that don't live at that standard. In Matthew chapter 11 and Luke chapter 7, Jesus is constantly living with sinners, so much so that there was these accusations that said that he is a drunk, he's a wine bibber, he's a glutton, and he's the friend of sinners. Sometimes we have like spiritual amnesia and we forget what we used to be like. Well, I can't believe that person they're cussing over there. And that person, man, they're smoking. You realize that you smoked for 20 years and all of a sudden you forgot what that world is like and you want nothing to do with it. You're so offended. I'm offended by their language. I'm offended by how they dressed. I'm offended by how they acted. You know what? Aren't you glad that Jesus isn't offended by how you act? That he's not offended by how you speak? I'm so grateful that Jesus doesn't take offense to my behavior. Instead, he dives into my life. He wants to engage my life. And sometimes we as Christians want to disconnect from them. Well, if you're going to talk like that, I don't even want to be around. If you're going to dress like that, you're going to eat and drink like that. No, Jesus says this is not our time to leave. This is our time to stay. We need to have impact and influence. We don't want to flee. We want to engage. Let's not be offended. Let's live free. Let's live full. Let's be ambidextrous. Let's not only just live in our safe Christianese world. Let's live in the world, not necessarily partaking and being of the world, but we need to be in it. We need to engage with it. I want to have a call out to all of us that we would live in this world free, full, and unoffendable. You know, sometimes even there's little sayings like, well, they didn't even come over and say hi to me. So did you go say hi to them? Well, they didn't even shake my hand. Well, did you go shake their hand? Well, they invited everybody else, But why didn't they invite me? Well, why don't you start something? And you invite them over. It's not always everybody else's fault. Sometimes we need to take some personal responsibility and say, if I want life to work out a certain way, I can't be offended by everybody else's actions. I need to take ownership of my life. I got to have a renewed mind. I got to have a transforming of my mind and start having the mind of Christ. Jesus wasn't looking for us to figure it out and to make him happy. He said, I'm going to figure it out for you. I'm going to engage and make this life so much better for you. I really hope that we can have this perspective where we just live free with people. Let's not be laden our friends and family with a whole bunch of expectations that they've got to perform for us. Listen, my joy level is not propped up on somebody else's behavior because they're going to let me down every time. And my joy is going to crumble every time. My joy ladder is propped up on a much higher place. Namely, it's leaning against the throne of God. A throne that is solid and secure, and it's unshaken. It will not be moved. That's where my joy comes from. Not by other people's behavior, not by other people's words. I just live free. I live full and try to live to my best, unoffendable. That's the call that God has for all of us. That's where we want to live. We want to live free. We want to live full. We want to live undefendable. And that's the challenge. We can do that. Let's practice that this week. We'll see you again next week.